All right, this is Daf Yomi in Motion, number 810. Today we're going to learn Daf Tzadi in Metzia, and we're going to be speaking about Lo Sachsom Shor B'Bisha, the love of not muzzling one's animal while it's working with, and the Gemara starts on the bottom of Peites Amid base, last line, Tana Rabbanan. We have a brace that says that paros marchosois bitavua, the paros that are working to, and they're stamping on kernels of barley, soybean. So what they did, that normal disha, where there was an issa to be lo sachsom, is when they take the shibailais, the stalks, together with the little pods of kernels, and then the animal will tread on that and separate the stalks from the kernels will come away from the stalks. But to actually break the seed from within the chaff, that's not the process where there's an isser of lo sachsom. So if there, and that's what this is. This is hamarchosois bitavua, is stamping on the kernels to break the seed out from inside the kernels, and not just to separate the stalk from the seed. And the way they do that is they get the seeds out. We're in the bottom of Peites Amid base, last line. The way they do that is they soak these kernels with the chaff and with the klipa, and then they dry it in an oven, and then the animal steps on it and the inner kernel comes out. That there is really no isser of lo sachsom. So that's what it says. If someone has the paros, the stepping on those kernels, marchosois b'tavua, or if they're hadoshois b'truma, or if they're doing stam disha, stamping and separating the stalk from the kernels, but it happens to be truma b'maiser. So eno over mishum bal sachson. There's not going to be any lav of bal, because since the animal, it's not really the schayra of trail of the owner. It's really owned by the kahanim, or if it's Meiser Rishon, it's owned by the Levim. So there's not really a problem in that. There's not going to be any lav of lo sachsom. And in the first case, that's when they're breaking the inner kernel from the outer klipa. That's also not a problem of lo sachsom, because that's not what it was originally, where the lav was originally set on. Eino oiver mishum lo sachsom. Hey, Morris, but what should, because it does look bad, the animal would have a muzzle on it, and it's mamish doing disha. So because of Morris Ayin, maybe a bull ma'oso hamin v'soila lo tarskolin shebepia. Rather, they should take a grain that the animal is working with, stepping on, and put it in a feed bag in front of the animal's mouth, and let it eat. Attach it to the in front of its mouth, let it eat from that, and then it won't look like he's muzzling and keeping the animal from eating, even though he has the right to, even though it's not a problem. And Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says that don't just put a feed bag in front of it and give it the same type of produce that it's stepping on, because that's part of the din of lo sachsom. When you would do this, to put a feed bag in front of the animal, it has to be the same type of food that it's stepping on. It can't be less. You can't let it step on a quality grain and have it eat a cheap grain. But Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, Omer, maybe that put the best, karshinim are the best for it. And that's what you should put in. Maybe because you can say, then there's like a reason why you have a bag. Maybe then it's even less of a problem, because now it's more understandable why there's a food bag in front of it, because he wants it to eat and be strong and have the best grain. Whereas if you would just give it the same type of food that it's stepping on, maybe that could still look like a problem, because he doesn't want the animal to get to that food for some reason. So here at least we see that there's, if the animal is stepping on these, that there's eno over mishum lo sachsom shor b'disha. And we have a contradiction from this, from a Bryce of Ramini. It says paros hamarchosois b'tavua, the same thing. Paros that are stepping on dried out kernels in order to break them open. He's not over. Not like we said. That's the same. He's not over because that's not where the lav was mentioned. It was mentioned breaks separating the shibaylais from the kernels. Mishum bal tachsom. He's not going to be over on bal tachsom. But dashos bitruma, same thing. If the person, however, if it's doing a dashos bitruma, the meiser over mishum bal tachsom. So here's the kasha, because before we said he's even if it's a dashos doing disha on truma, the meiser, that there's no lav of lo sachsom. And here we see that there is. This is a brisa that says that there would be a lav of lo sachsom, bal sachsom. And then it continues and says, "V'machri hadosh b'parasa shel Yisrael." Let's say a nachri takes the animal of the Yisrael, and even if the Yisrael tells him to take it, he tells him to do disha, muzzle this animal, and do disha with your produce. So there's eno over mishum bal sachsom. There's not a problem, and that's where the Yisrael told him to take his own animal and to muzzle it and to disha with the goy's animal. We're saying here eno over mishum bal sachsom. Yisrael hadash b'paraso shel nachri. However, Yisrael that would take the animal of a nachri and would muzzle it, it would be over mishum bal sachsom. So here we see that there's a kasha, truma al truma, because in the first brisa we saw that it's not over if he's doing disha bit truma, because truma is not really the owner's produce, and therefore there's not a problem of muzzling the animal from eating it. But here in the second brisa we saw that there's no problem of muzzling it when it's doing hamar chosais b'tavua, but there was a problem of muzzling it when it was doing disha on tavua of truma, and that's a kasha on the Mishnah that we had before. So the Gemara says, so kasha truma a truma, kasha meiser a meiser. So the Gemara says that we can be miyashiv the problem bishleim a truma lo kasha. The truma on the truma we can be miyashiv. It's kan be truma, kan be gidule truma. But the case where we saw that it was, meaning in this brisa where it was disha, was a lav of lo sachsom, was when it was gedule truma. If the person took real truma and he replanted it and it grew into new growth, new plants, so that is called gedule truma, and it's really got the din. It's only d'Rabbanan. It's only truma d'Rabbanan. So it's really like chulin, and therefore it's like just as any regular grain, there's an isra of lo sachsom. So too with this, there would be lo sachsom. That would be the second price. This would be. It still has the shem truma on it, but it is like chulin. It's only d'Rabbanan, and therefore there would be a lab of lo sachsom. And truma, the real truma, would be in the first Mishnah that we had just at the top of the Amud, and that would be no problem of lo sachsom, because it's not really the owner's produce; it's the Kohen's produce. So there's not a problem of muzzling the animal when he's doing disha to that. Maybe there is a problem, but he's not going to be over on the lab of bal sachsom. So by truma we were miyasha, but what about meiser? A meiser kasha, that still would be a kasha, because we don't see that the Chazal said that by gedule truma they called it truma d'Rabbanan, but by gedule meiser, to go and replant meiser, for example, meiser sheni, that's supposed to be eaten in Yerushalayim, and to go replant it and have it, and the new growth, to have it be considered meiser d'Rabbanan, we don't see such a thing. Kash. So more asks, V'chitema meiser nami lo kash. Maybe we should say the same thing by meiser. Let him replant the meiser. Let's say that it works the same way. Let's say that the one is talking about the gedule meiser, and one is talking about real meiser. So kan be meiser, but kan be gedule meiser. More says bishleim gedule truma. No, with truma it worked to say such a thing. The gedule truma. One brisa was talking about. The brisa was talking about gedule truma, and the Mishnah above was talking about, or was a brisa above also was talking about real truma. So that works. Gedule truma is called truma. El gedule ma'aser chulaninu. Gedule ma'aser, if they would replant the produce, which was ma'aser rishon or ma'aser sheni, it would be considered chulin. And he has a brisa. Tnan. We learn in a Mishnah in Trumos that this point. Gedule tevel, it says let gedule tevel gedule ma'aser sheni. Chulin says that they're chulin. What does it mean, gedule tevel? If someone took tevel, which was supposed to be meiser, it's also to eat until it's meiser, and they would replant it. All of the new growth that would come from that tevel, they said it's mamish like chulin. That it's like it's not even like means that you could eat it be'arai. That if you were out in the fields and you didn't see the pnei abayis, it wouldn't have become a din tevel. You could still eat it be'arai. Achilas arai. It turns back into chulin, and so too the gedule that was tevel and ma'aser sheni, and so once it's got the din chulin, for sure, if a person is doing disha with an animal on this type of produce, this is also for him to muzzle the animal, and therefore we have a kasha because the first brisa said that ma'aser was it was not over if you muzzled. Truma for meiser, and the second brisa said he was over. So to say that the first one is meiser sheni, we could understand why it'd be usher, because it's like meiser sheni or it's meiser rishon, it belongs to the Levi, or even if it's meiser sheni. I think the understanding is it's meiser rishon, so it's usher, it belongs to the Levi. But the second brisa that said it's not a problem, it's ain't over with meiser. Right? The reason why it worked by truma was because we called it in the brisa, we called it truma. And so even though we were calling it truma, it was only durabundant, so you would still be usher to muzzle. But in the first brisa and the second brisa, we called it meiser, and we can't say gedule regular meiser and gedule meiser because the first brisa where it's not going to be over will be real meiser, so it's not the owners, and the second brisa where it will be over is when it's really like chulin. But why would we call it meiser? Gedule meiser is not called meiser, so we would never be calling it meiser. So we couldn't have that answer that it's going to be over because it's called meiser, but it's really like chulin. We wouldn't be able to answer that. So Gemara says, no, it only works by truma. It's called truma. But gedule meiser never gets called meiser, so we wouldn't be able. That can't be shot in the use of the lashon of meiser in the second brisa.